the foundation of every commercial deal. Every commercial real estate transaction begins with one simple question: is there a valid contract? Without a valid contract, there is no enforceable agreement, no protection for your client, and no transaction to close. As we build on the introduction from Section 1.1, we now move into the core legal elements that make a commercial contract legally binding in Arizona. These elements are not optional. They are required under Arizona law and reinforced through both statute and case law. Understanding them is the difference between a deal that closes and a deal that falls apart. Mutual agreement, the meeting of the minds. Mutual agreement, often referred to as meeting of the minds, is the first essential element of any valid contract. This occurs when all parties clearly understand and agree to the same terms. In commercial transactions, this can become complicated due to multiple layers of negotiation, counteroffers, and addenda. For example, a buyer submits an offer to purchase a retail plaza in Chandler. The seller responds with a counteroffer adjusting price, due diligence timelines, and tenant estoppel requirements. If the buyer signs the counteroffer exactly as presented, mutual agreement is achieved. However, if the buyer changes even one term before signing, the original counteroffer is rejected, and a new offer is created. Arizona case law reinforces this concept. In Hill v. Jones, while primarily focused on disclosure, the court emphasized the importance of clear agreement and understanding between parties. Ambiguity in terms can lead to disputes and potential litigation. Consideration: something of value must be exchanged. Consideration is what each party gives up or receives in exchange for entering into the contract. In commercial real estate, this is typically the purchase price, but it can also include lease terms, improvements, financing arrangements, or concessions. For instance, a buyer agrees to purchase an office building in Scottsdale for $2 million, while the seller agrees to provide a $50,000 tenant improvement credit. Both parties are exchanging something of value, satisfying the requirement for consideration. Without consideration, a contract is not enforceable. This principle is rooted in contract law and supported by Arizona legal standards. If a contract lacks consideration, it may be deemed void and unenforceable in a court of law. Capacity: the ability to enter into a contract. Capacity refers to the legal ability of a party to enter into a contract. In commercial transactions, this often involves verifying that the individual signing the contract has authority to act on behalf of an entity such as an LLC or corporation. Imagine negotiating a contract for a warehouse in Mesa where the seller is an LLC. If the person signing the contract does not have authority under the operating agreement, the contract could be challenged or invalidated. This is a common issue in commercial deals and highlights the importance of verifying authority early in the transaction. Under Arizona law, contracts entered into by parties lacking capacity may be void or voidable. This creates significant risk for agents who fail to confirm proper authority. Lawful purpose: the contract must be legal. A valid contract must have a lawful purpose. This means the transaction itself must comply with all applicable laws, including zoning, land use, and regulatory requirements. For example, if a buyer intends to use a property for a purpose that violates local zoning laws, the contract may not be enforceable. As an agent, you are not expected to be a zoning expert, but under AAC R4-281101, you are required to exercise reasonable care and advise your client to seek expert guidance when necessary. Failing to address unlawful use can lead to serious consequences, including contract termination, financial loss, and potential disciplinary action. Statute of Frauds, the written requirement building on what we discussed in Section 1.1, the Statute of Frauds under ARS. Paragraph 44-101 requires that real estate contracts be in writing to be enforceable. In commercial transactions, this includes not only the purchase agreement, but also any amendments, addenda, and material changes. Consider a situation where parties verbally agree to extend the due diligence period on a commercial property. If this extension is not documented in writing and signed by all parties, it may not be enforceable. This can result in missed deadlines and unintended contract termination. This is one of the most common mistakes agents make, failing to properly document changes. In commercial real estate, documentation is everything. Real-world breakdown. When one element fails. Let's tie this together with a real-world example. A buyer enters into a contract to purchase a mixed-use property in Tempe. The agreement includes price and terms, but the individual signing on behalf of the seller's corporation does not have proper authority. Even though there is mutual agreement, consideration, and a lawful purpose, the contract fails due to lack of capacity. The result? The transaction is delayed, legal disputes arise, and both parties incur additional costs. This example shows how all elements must be present. If even one is missing, the entire contract can be compromised. Connecting to the next section. Now that we understand the essential elements of a valid commercial contract, we are ready to move into how these elements are actually structured within a commercial purchase agreement. In the next section, we will begin breaking down the commercial contract itself, line by line, so you can see how these legal principles are applied in real transactions. This is where theory turns into practice. Online discussion. Why is mutual agreement more complex in commercial transactions compared to residential deals? Answer. Commercial transactions often involve multiple negotiations, customized terms, and sophisticated parties. This increases the likelihood of misunderstandings or changes, making it more difficult to ensure all parties are in full agreement. What is one risk of failing to verify capacity in a commercial contract? Answer. If the person signing the contract does not have proper authority, the contract may be invalid or challenged, potentially causing delays, legal disputes, or cancellation of the transaction. Why is it critical to document all changes to a contract in writing? Answer. Under the statute of frauds, real estate contracts must be in writing to be enforceable. Verbal agreements or undocumented changes may not hold up legally, leading to disputes and potential loss of rights under the contract.